Okay, this is a video that I've been wanting to do for a while. I've done individual videos on these stamps before, but I really haven't done kind of a targeted type of video theme here, okay? And what that theme is are delicate versus kind of some more solid types of sky images, okay? Now what I mean by that is some images like this one, the Fountain of Light, or this one right here, which is Aurora Borealis curtains, there's Aurora Borealis rays, images that are primarily, or if not totally, made up of only dots like this, okay? And I've wanted to do a video on how to use these and kind of the differences between these types of sky images and kind of the other types of images that do have some solid areas in them. Okay, now these ones are primarily made up of dots as well, but they're highly condensed dots where they're condensed so much that they become solid masses in some areas. And how these ones can potentially differ from kind of the more delicate, spaced out, stippled types of work, okay? These ones, when I say delicate, I mean when you stamp those out and you apply additional colors, we don't want to lose the forms that these dots are creating. Okay, now it's just better to get right into it here, and I'll show you what the differences are. Okay, so I won't use every stamp out. Well, actually, let me start off with a more solid image in the form of the Milky Way Large stamp, which is right here. This is one of the more solid types of sky images, okay? So let's start off with that one. Okay, now there's different colors that you can stamp this out with. You can stamp out kind of the more solid-based types of images in anything from really light values to darker values. You can stamp them out in black if you want to, okay? But let's just do it in kind of a semi-lighter tone. I mean, I could do this in the lightest blue possible and stamp it up there, but, you know, it does represent a night sky. But let's do it, I don't know, if we have time here, maybe we'll do it in a couple different ways. Okay, so this is, I would say, it's kind of on the lighter side of a medium value blue. This one's Caribbean blue. It would be similar to like a Distress Ink Broken China, maybe, something like that. Or maybe even probably a little bit lighter than like a Distress Mermaid Lagoon if you're familiar with those inks, okay? All right, let's get this stamped out right here, okay? Caribbean blue. It's kind of like got a little bit of a warmish tinge to it, okay? And let's go for a couple different impressions of that because that's typically how I use this stamp here. Okay, if there's a lot of space. Okay, now I'm just going to be only stamping these images out. Normally this would be accompanied by something else. Some people use this type of thing for fireworks on the ground, like a little fountain of light or something like that. Or it could be kind of how I used it recently in the form of a kind of a volcanic type of explosive visual right over the top of a mountain. Okay? All right. But let's just use these because that's the main point of this video here. Okay, now this scene right here, or this sky imagery, you can go into it now, because it is so solid, you can go into it with anything from lighter tones to darker tones. Let me just use some variety of brands of inks here, just so you know this isn't Marvy specific or something like that. These are all just dye-based inks right here. But this can be said for any types of inks that you might want to use with it. You might be using, I don't know, oxides or something like that to stamp this out. What this video is based around are the values more than the type of ink you use, okay? It would apply to all of that, okay? If you're stamping this out and you're using pastels or chalks or colored pencils, same exact thing, okay? So it doesn't matter what media you're working with in terms of what this video is targeted on, okay? All right, so let's go into this now. Let's use a Bahama Blue memento ink, okay? So I'm going to go into this right here, and I'm just going to blend in some additional tones, okay? And as you can see, I'm still retaining a lot of the form of what this image is based around, which is a bunch of tone surrounding negative space. And what I mean by negative space is the stars that are being defined by the tone around them, okay, right? It's not a star that looks like, you know, solid like this. It's, you know, all these little stars like that defined by the darkness around them, okay? Kind of like you'd see in the night sky. So, as I'm toning into this like this, okay, now I just went in with that Bahama blue. Let's go back into it with the color that we stamped it out in now, okay? Which is the Caribbean blue. Okay. Like so. Now I kind of purposely left a lot of the space around it. I could have filled that in with additional Milky Way imagery. Okay, now as you can see, I'm going into my Milky Way here, you know, with this ink here. I'm not just going right around on the perimeter around the stamp image itself. I'm going into it because that's what's going to integrate these types of images with the surrounding space. Okay, now sometimes you might have some land down here and you might just have a small area above it with a little bit of that Milky Way showing. But this is how you would use it in that smaller space, okay? All right, let's just move on to some additional tones here. This is kind of a medium blue. Okay, now I'm leaving some areas in this light, okay? And I'm kind of filling in more than I normally would just for the purpose of, you know, kind of to make a point on this lesson here, okay? But see, no matter how dark I'm getting here, we can still see this texturing out here. But look at this, how this is starting to kind of blend in with the surrounding area right there, right? Okay, but you still see all these different forms in here, you know, even though they've been darkened, okay? Okay, let's go with the Danube blue. Maybe I'll go with something a little bit darker. Let's move this along. I think you'll get the point of it here. Okay, this is a pretty dark blue. It's like a navy blue. I think I need to re-ink my inks. We've gone through a couple heat waves and it's fairly dry out. It's dry right now, too. Fall weather. That's why there's so many wildfires all over Southern California. Luckily not around us right now, knock on wood. But I think it does affect the pads. I've heard in Arizona when I've been out there, some people told me at the recent shows, they say that they don't get any pads that where a re-inker is not available. And they always buy the re-inkers with their pads. I don't know, that's what a couple of people said. Or one person said, and the other people around her said, yeah, you know, that's the same for them. Okay, so anyways, I'm taking this and I'm blending this right in here. And then, you know, we can do other things. We can come in here and add some additional white dots with a gel pen or something like that. But my main point here is I'm coming into this image quite a bit. And you can see that Milky Way imagery still in here. And you can see it in the darkness. See where that texture goes right on out here? And I've used a much darker color to blend right over that impression. The impression goes all the way to here, okay? That first impression, okay? You see it in there? You can kind of see where it ends right there, but you can see where it goes all the way in there. And that's because this image in that area, okay, I stamped it this way, it's fairly dense and solid right through here, okay? I don't know. You might get, you know, kind of get the point that I'm kind of, you know, moving towards here. Now I'm going to do the same thing, and let's go with the Aurora Borealis curtains, okay? It's a certain type of, I don't know, northern light type of formation. There's different types out there. There's different color northern lights and whatnot, depending on where you are in the world. Okay, now let's stamp this one out. Let's go ahead and do a comparison. Let's do it with the same Caribbean blue, okay? Just so we can do a straight comparison contrast here. All right, now this one, I love this one, kind of like over a lake or over some trees or something like that. You can stamp this out and have some pine trees in the foreground. You can darken this in and do embossed white trees in front of it, like a winter type of scenario, which is time, you know, the time when you typically see, you know, the northern lights happening. Okay, quite a bit of a difference, right? Because this image right here, even stamped out in black, is going to be fairly delicate, okay? Because, again, it's made out of these dots right here. Okay, now let's just go in here really quickly, and let's bring in some additional tones. I think you kind of, you know, you can probably predict what's going to happen here if I'm not too careful about my ink application on this design, but I'll show you just how to get around that too, okay? So let's go into it. I think I went in with the Bahama blue on this one right here first. I don't even remember. Okay, so if I go in here like this, okay, now I like to go into this design, and I like to kind of go into it in the spirit of those kind of curtains moving up, okay? So I'll adjust my ink application. I don't just come right in there like that. I mean, you could go like this if you want to, okay? But see, the thing that you want to retain are those curtainy types of rays going up there, okay? They're kind of nice and delicate. So we want to be fairly delicate in terms of our ink application. Now, when I mean delicate, I'm not, you have to be gingerly and go like this and be careful. I'm just talking about delicate in terms of going into too much of these rays with, you know, your inks. And if you do go into them, you know, you can go into it like that with a very, you know, dry application of it, okay? Don't go into it like this, though, okay? Like in those ray areas. You can go into it pretty hard out here, but just when you're around the rays, be mindful of them, okay? All right, so let's just adding this on here, okay? Okay, so we're defining those rays through the use of tone, all right? All right. Now this looks pretty good. I mean, it's hard for me to kind of not, you know, be too careful about it, or be uncareful and lose those, because I'm always talking about, you know, how to retain them. So, okay, I'm going to purposely go in here and really go into it, you know, where I kind of lose the forms, okay? It's, you know, it kills me to do that, you know, to go against what I know to do, okay? Okay, so I'm going in here. Now, this is just one color of ink, right? But see, I am starting, you almost start to lose. There, you can still see the outlines here of the form, but we're really starting to lose the image. I mean, I can practically have stamped this stamp out, gone over it with this, and we might as well have not even used the stamp, because, you know, just kind of using your streaking motion would, in effect, create that. Okay, do you know what I mean by that? It means that, you know, we've kind of eradicated the actual image, you know, just through the use of going into it with too much of the same or darker value into it, okay? So here we go. I'm just using the next tone of blue. I haven't even gone to like a dark blue yet, okay? All right. Now I can still see, you'll be able to see that let's see, the outline of the image. Can you see it right here? All right, you can kind of see a little bit of a change there. All right, but I like to run through a pretty nice range of values when using this, okay? So let's go into the darker blues again, like this, okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to avoid going into here with that, okay? Now I'm going to do another one with this one, so I'll show you a better technique. I mean, this one doesn't look too bad, but it's really, you know, the image itself has really kind of disappeared, so it's barely visible, okay? It's just a paper towel, too. So people have asked me if I use makeup brushes, and I really don't. I like them for certain things, but this is going to give you so much more coverage because this absorbs more, because paper towels are made to absorb moisture, okay? Now you can do this on matte paper, too. This is a matte paper here. I mean, this is like the worst paper you can use for this, you know, if I'm stamping on it, it's copy paper. But if you're using a pretty good matte cardstock, you can blend on it pretty good. It's going to absorb a lot of your colors very quickly, though. So you just have to kind of use a little bit more ink. You have to apply more tone, and like a kitchen sponge might even be better for that. Okay, let's go into black with this right now, okay? Because we're talking about kind of a night sky and this kind of glowing light, you know, in that sky, you know, reflective of the Aurora Borealis, Northern Lights type of scenario, okay? So coming into it like so. I mean, this looks pretty good. I mean, I like what I see. My paper towel's starting to fray here. Not a bad use. I don't know. We've, you know, made 2 cards with like a, I don't know, a third of a paper towel. That's pretty economic, I would say. Okay. All right, so we have this going right now. Okay, but let's take a look at this now, okay? I mean, you can say that that image was kind of used as a reference point for us to kind of fill in there, but it really is practically invisible. You can see the textures of it, but we don't look at cards like, you know, 5 inches away from our face. This is the way we look at them, okay? So if we really want to kind of make use of this, the forms of this, we need to stamp out these kind of more delicate styles of, I would say, between mid-tone to light, you know, images where the stippling work is not so condensed that it looks terribly dark. I have some of those darker regions right in here, but very delicately, and as they move out there, it gets lighter and lighter and lighter. It dissipates, okay? The concentration of dots becomes more separated, okay? So it dissipates, so I don't have a harsh line on the outside. Okay, now let's do this one again, all right? I do like the look of that, but it's just, you know, it's missing the imagery. Okay, so let's stamp this one again. Okay, so here's my recommendation on these types of images. And you can do these in any colors you want. Like this one here could be, who knows, it could be a 4th of July firework, and you get them in any colors. You can do them green, oranges, reds, whatever, pink, okay? Whatever you want to do. If it's volcano, maybe it's this kind of explosive type of thing, especially if it's like a, I don't know, movie where you see like dinosaurs or something like that. Okay, but what colors do you do this in? If this one's going to be in like warm tones and lava flowing and things like that, maybe you stamp it out in like a dark brown. A red would be good. Something of the darker type of value of that given color scheme. For something like this, let's just do it in the same color scheme that we stamped this one in. But remember, this one we did it in, I would say that's like a 40% blue or something like that if we, you know, we're on a value scale, okay? It's a little bit less than mid-tone, I think. I think that this one's kind of more of a mid-tone, mid-value blue, okay? This one's kind of a lighter one, right? So what you do on these more delicate images, if you want to retain the forms and textures of them as you apply other colors into them, you just start off with a little bit of a darker color to begin with. You could go with black, okay? I mean, that's up to you. I typically see these types of things as my light source, okay? So if I see northern lights in the sky, that's probably going to be my source of light. If this is kind of a volcanic explosion full of brilliant, you know, golden light, I would see that as my light source. Now, if there's golden tones in the sky and everything like that being caused by that, I would typically see that as the color of light. So I would typically go in my browns or reds for something like that. If this is going to be a bluish type of color, light, then I make my light source that color. Does that make sense? Okay. So if I'm stamping a sun and it's going to be a sunset, I'm probably, not going to stamp it in purple or something like that. I mean, you could, but this is just my kind of starting point for something like that. Okay, so I'm stamping this in a dark tone. This is as dark a blue as I have. It's Prussian blue, okay? But one of the things I'm going to do too is I'm just going to wipe off the edges here a little bit, okay? Going to about 1/4 inch, okay? Because when I start blending my tones into it, I won't have as harsh of a rectangle line like that. So that's just one really easy little, tip right there to save yourself a lot of time when you get into it, because you won't have to blend in so much, that outside area. All right, let's get this stamped out here. Okay, now remember, if you're stamping this out on like a matte paper, and let's say you wanted to use pan pastels or something like that, instead of using these additional tones of blue to come into it, you can still stamp it out in your dark blue, but just come into it with your light blues and your light, medium blues, darker blues, things like that, and pan pastels, chalks, colored pencils, etc., okay? But, again, if you're starting off with a little bit of a darker tone to begin with in the impression, that will hold up. Now remember, it's not stamping out in a big solid mass, because this image right here is just made up of dots and is very tonal and delicate, okay? The dots are separated. Each little dot on this scene this impression right here, it's having a hard time focus because you can't find it here. I'll put my finger there. There we go. Each little dot there is a super dark Prussian blue, okay? It's just that it's a small dot and they're all kind of separated, okay? Now you can see my little lines here to give kind of movement with that curtainy type of hanging kind of look of the northern lights. Okay, now let's go into it now. Now, go into it starting with your lighter tones. Pan pastels, colored pencils, chalks, whatever, okay? That's if you're, working on a matte paper, something like that. I've seen these types of things even on linens and things like that, which I don't know, that usually scares me away from using something so delicate, but I don't know, some people really make it work. It's really amazing. If you're using something like a textured paper, though, where there's kind of indentations on it, watercolor papers and things like so on and so forth, you might get less of the impression because some of those dots are not going to print on it because, there's a recession right there in the paper. Okay, so I'm going on this with that Caribbean blue. I think my Caribbean blue here is getting a little bit dry, I can feel, but we'll just layer those tones into it. Now see how I'm coming right into the design. I'm not trying to go right up to the edge of that rectangle, the actual form of the northern lights. But see, I can come into that right there with a very dry application of this ink right here, and you still see the impression of the image there, okay? So that's why we start off with a darker impression to begin with of those types of more delicate images, okay? We want them to hang around, you know, we want to utilize the image itself, the form. Chances are, you know, if you've bought that, it's because you like the image, so, you know, so we want to retain it and make use of all those different textures that, you know, in this case, the Aurora Borealis curtains will provide you with, okay? So see, I'm able to go right into it, and when you can go into the image without eradicating the image, that's really good because you're blending that image in with the surrounding area, okay? So I'm leaving some areas on the side here, or in the interior there. See how that ray kind of goes out there? And I'm going to have these kind of hanging curtain-y type of things going in here. I'll show you how I do that. Okay, that was that one. Let's go to the Bahama Blue. That was the first color that I used last time. The Memento and Ranger inks are really perfect for your first colors. The Marvies are okay, but they're not as thick as Memento, Ranger, basically every other color out there. Yeah, see how easy that one kind of blends in like that. The Memento would have been the better one to go on here with first because it's so thick. And, you know, the thicker the ink, the easier it is to spread around. Okay, now as you go into this, be careful not to eradicate all those rays. We don't want to just go like this and go over everything, okay? Because then, again, it's a delicate image and it would stand, you know, it could potentially just, you know, straight on disappear. Or it just wouldn't be quite as visible. We did stamp it out darker, but, you know, we'd have to really kind of look at it very carefully to see the image in there. Okay, all right. So that is that. I'll show you what this looks like, too. We'll stamp a couple images right over the top of it, and I'll show you what this, you know, these scenes could look like with a, you know, a couple stamps stamped over the top front of them. Okay, so this one right here, this one's good too. I mean, we can go in there with a little bit of pink too, if we retain some of that white area. Let's go in with the Marvy here. Or should we... Let's go with the Danube Blue. Here, it's a little bit darker. It's really dry out here right now, where I am, so I can feel the inks drying faster. It plays a big factor, you know, in terms of how your inks apply. It could work to your advantage too, though, sometimes, because sometimes I build up my ink so much, and then I wipe some inks on there like that, but nothing's being applied because it's so damp on there. It's just kind of like I'm applying, but I'm kind of wiping off at the same time. Okay, so this is a pretty dark ink right here, but, and then I've, you know, I've avoided going in here, but you can still see all that image right out here. Okay, see that out there? And here, let me get this to focus in here. So you can still see these dots right here. It's delicate though, you know. Yeah, let's see, focusing. Why isn't this focusing? Ah, here, okay, here we go. See like that? You can still see those forms underneath there, okay? Right in there, here, here. Okay, so we're kind of avoiding those areas. I might come in there and hit them with a little bit of color though, okay? But you feel those kind of hanging kind of areas like that, okay? I can feel this paper getting fairly saturated. I wouldn't say it's super saturated yet because I can still apply, okay, like that. But see, when I go like that, watch this. Let me build it up pretty dark, see that? And I go like that. That means it's kind of getting towards a little bit of a super saturation because the ink kind of just sits on the page like that and you're kind of able to move it around. You can use that to your kind of blending strategy too. You can utilize that super saturated area to really blend your colors around. Okay, this is a Marvy Blue. It's kind of that medium one. It's called light blue, but it's really kind of more of a medium blue to me. There's many other lighter blues out there on the market, even in the Marvy line. I don't know why they call that light blue. Maybe because it was the lightest blue in kind of their real primary set, you know, of like about 8 colors or something like that, 10 colors, maybe it was 12. Okay, so anyways, that is the dark blue there. I still see my image, you know, perfectly clear. I mean, it's much more distinct than, say, this one. Okay, let's do a little bit of comparison here, okay? We can still see that, you know, the curtains and things like that. I mean, this is a little bit more delicate, okay? People are saying, I like that one better, you know? Well, you know, that's fine. You can like that one better. But, you know, it's really hard to see the image. Okay, now when we go to the black, okay, I'm not using a full black. It's more of like a gray like that, okay? It's not a full black, but I'm going to be careful not to just eradicate my imagery and my light in here at this point in time. You know, we retained it through the lighter tones, so don't kind of just, you know, rid the scene of it by the time you get to the darkest tone. The darkest tones, you know, you kind of, you know, hang out in the perimeter a little bit more like this. Okay, so, you know, there's not going to be a chance of losing that delicate interior down there. Okay. Now this is one matter where I do want it to get quite a bit darker out here. Now if I want it to get darker, one of the things I can do is I can just allow this card to dry, you know, much longer and whatnot. And then it will be more accepting of additional ink instead of just kind of wiping off like that, okay? So you can heat set it, or you can just let it sit for, you know, 5 minutes or something like that. Or you can kind of tap like this, you know, to get that kind of dark tone. But I want it a little bit more, you know, kind of blended out like that. So that's what I do sometimes. Sometimes I add tone like this. My paper towel's ripping apart. And then I just kind of drag it down like that in the direction. Now, if I was doing something like this, here's your technique change. I'm not going to do this one in this video. But instead of going just all down like this, see the spirit of these ones are kind of going out like this. So I'm blending colors in this way, okay? And then when I'm coming in here, I'm blending it in this way, okay? So you go in the kind of the spirit of the direction of the light. This is the only one like this where you have these arcing kind of, you know, beams and rays like that, okay? So it's kind of, you're coming in this way. So what I do is I just kind of go like this, and I blend in like this. Now, if you want to see this one in use, go back a couple of videos, and you'll see my volcano scene where I did use that, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay, so anyway, see how that's really building up nice and dark. We still see the image in there just perfectly fine. Okay, now this is really starting to set up here. So even as I'm just blabbing for a few seconds, it becomes a little bit more dry, and I'm able to go in there. Okay, let's go in there and let's tint that a little bit. Let's bring a little bit of a additional tone in here. Okay, now I stamped out my Aurora Borealis curtains using Prussian blue, which is a navy blue, navy almost black blue, okay? So if I go over it with a color that is lighter in value than that, okay? Although it's very delicate, it's not a solid, big, solid you know, version of that Prussian blue. Any type of lighter tone blended over the top of a darker stamped one, you should have that retention of those forms in there by using that lighter tone. Okay, so this one's like a orchid here, okay? Like a, you know, something like a pink would do well. If you want to make this one of my favorite, Northern Lights is kind of the greenish one, so if you can come in here with some green, that would look fantastic too. Okay, I want to come into it with kind of a delicate application of this. So I'm just wiping that off like this. This is really easy to do. And then you just kind of, see, I I can't see anything being applied. And that's kind of what you want here. You want kind of a real delicate look. Now see, I've gone over it like, what, 10 times, and I can see some of that color starting to appear like that. Okay. So let's kind of blend it in. Once I kind of get the feel of it, then I kind of start adding a little bit more. See, I'm going right into the pad and blending in like this. Okay. All right. See that right there? Isn't that fun? I'm removing some of the black. I have no idea what the paper this is. I found it somewhere. And that black is just wiping right off. It doesn't make it for a harder process. It makes for an easier blending process. But if you want it darker, you just have to allow it to dry a lot more. Okay, so anyways, you see that kind of that Northern Lights type of touch in there. It'd be better if this got a little bit darker, though, because it is supposedly a nighttime type of sky. Let's have some fun here, and let's stamp some images right over the top of it, being that we already have it stamped out and such. Let's keep these really simple and just go for some really deep, dark impressions right here with some foreground trees, so you can see this kind of image used in context a little bit more. Okay, this is a VersaFine black. Pigment ink, oil-based black right there. Look how much that Northern Lights really stands out against that background, and how fantastic that can look in a scene. Okay, I really love those little textures down there like that. Okay, so see those textures right there? Look at those textures right in here. See that glowing light right there? The variations of blue, violet, and orchid like that. Okay. Let's go with this. This is the spruce tree large. It makes for a really good foreground element because it is fairly bold. I use it in different heights. All of my trees, whenever I'm using them in application, if I use them in repetition, I try to change the height of them. I stamp some a little bit closer to another one sometimes, just so I get that variation going. But look at that glow. Okay, but this one's the real delicate one, so you can barely see the impression in here. So if I stamp, all I would need to do is just stamp. If I would have stamped that out a little bit darker, I would have seen a little bit more of that texture in there. I think this looks good, but it could practically have been done just with the streaking of the paper towel in there. Okay. This one, again, it makes more use of the image by retaining those textures and those streaks, those little micro detailed streaks in the scene, by having it stamped out in a really dark blue. You could try it in black sometime too, and then blend in all kinds of different colors into it. And the black impression really stands out against all the colors that you blend into it. Okay, so let's just go with this one right here. Okay. I think there's something on my stamp right here. It's not stamping too clear down here. I need to clean these off. My stamp saw sometimes after a while the oil-based ink on the stamp kind of dries, and it kind of resists the ink a little bit. So what I do is I put a little bit of a simple green. I actually pulled out my stamp cleaner, that one of those scouring little pads like that. I'm going to put a little simple green and water on it, diluted water, and I don't know, I have like 100 stamps that I need to clean off that I haven't gotten around to for a while. But look at that kind of deep night sky like that. Look how dimensional it is too when you use something really dark in the foreground against that, kind of nighttime type of sky in the background there. All right, you've come this far with me so far on this video. It's really kind of sitting in my my craw here. I think let's use a little bit of bleed-proof white. If you stick around for an extra, I don't know, 60 seconds or a minute here, I'll get us there with this technique right here. I'm just going with the bleed-proof white. Looks like there's enough moisture in there from the last time I used it. I don't know, a day or two ago maybe. Sometimes you really have to add water to this each time. I don't reconstitute the whole entire bottle top to bottom. I just kind of get the top portion back into solution, and I just use the top portion of this paint here. Bleed-proof white, if this is like the first video that you've tuned in that I've seen me do, it's a I use it on a lot of different scenes. It's a opaque white watercolor paint, and it's a real specialty ink. Calligraphy, it's really super popular with calligraphers because they do a lot of lettering work and they put it into their dip pens, calligraphy pens and so forth, brush pens, okay? All right, but I like it as a splatter painting mechanism here. See that right there? Look at that. There's no scene that a good splatter, can't improve. Look at that right there. We went over some of the trees. You can say in there it's some stars, and down here it's snowfall or something like that. Let's go a little bit more delicate right here. Okay, I'll just use a little bit. I don't know if that was a little bit. That was quite a bit right there. Okay, here, I can't focus in here. See that? Isn't that a great texture to go along with that Aurora Borealis stamp there? Okay, and this one right here, of course, is the Milky Way. Now, on this one, oops, let me show you how forgiving this Dr. Martin's bleed-proof white is. Watercolor paint. It just buffs right off of that. Even if it dries completely, it'll just rub right off if unless you spray seal it, you can't rub it off after then. But I went into this image a lot more, and this would be really great if I brought in some pinks or something like that in there, but that's not what this video is about. Complete finished scenes or something like that. It's about the retention of the delicate ones. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this Milky Way here. So let's put this over some of those trees a little bit more too. You can spray this on your hand without worrying about it. It washes off like instantly. Okay, so anyways, here you go. The retention of kind of the more solid-based images, you can really, do these in whatever color you want to. You can do them in light blue. Go into it with light blues for the most part. If you go over it completely with a navy blue, you're not going to be able to see it, but it will retain its form for a lot longer, okay? Let's take a look at these ones right here, okay? So see, what you want to do is you would just want to retain those kind of rays going up. I could do this on an 8.5 by 11 piece, okay, and the image is going to be like down here, and you just kind of blend in those tones, and you can carry that kind of that curtainy type of effect as far up here as you want, but then you can have the retention of the forms of the design itself right down here. See, even my camera can't focus. It thinks it's light or something like that, as opposed to the image. See that image right in here and those curtainy types of things going up there, those textures that I've added into the design. I want that real kind of pulling light to move the viewer's eye up to the skies up there, up to the heavens, okay? You can only see a little bit of it here. You can see a little bit of those kind of details in here. And again, because it's stamped so much lighter than these ones right here, okay? If you like this, you can certainly do it in these tones right here, but just be careful, because, they will have a tendency of disappearing if you've stamped it out lighter and then you bring in those same colors to color it with, or darker ones over the top of it. But when you start off with the darkest of the color scheme that you're using up here to begin with, they'll hang around through much darker types of coloring that you do on here. So again, this isn't a dye-based ink type of thing. Now, naturally, The way that I applied the ink is going to be different than if you're doing chalks or colored pencils or watercolor things or something like that. But the same types of concepts apply. You stamp out your image, and if you want to retain it, then just, as you're going into it with colored pencils or chalks or something like that, don't eradicate all your light. And when you get up to a tone that's similar to this value that you stamped out your images in, okay, just kind of be careful about it and just, color accordingly, okay? Now, it doesn't mean you can't eradicate the image if you want to. You can use the imagery itself as more of kind of a guide, but, if you want that imagery in there, same thing with anything like that. This one's a light beam. People use it around light houses or like the sun coming down. You want to come up in here, and if you want to retain those forms up here, if I stamp this out in like a yellow, okay, this is stamped out in black and it's really delicate, but if I stamped it out in yellow and then I colored over it in orange, you're not going to be able to see that anymore. So the more delicate it is, the darker I would recommend stamping it out, okay? And just one of those little tips around the side here, blot it off like any sky images. And then when you start blending in the form with the surrounding area, you'll have a big head start because the edge is not going to be stamped out as dark to begin with. So it's real easy to use these ones like that. Real easy to blend in. You're just going to have to put on the brakes a little bit when you get into those light areas, okay? And especially on the delicate ones. All right, if you have any questions, drop me a note in the comment section. If you've used these before and you've run into any types of issues with it, send me a photograph of it if you still have it, and I'll, tell you what you can do with it. If you have a stamp positioner or something like that too, I don't, but you could use those stamp positioners, and it's not any kind of sin to go back in and just to take that, oh my gosh, I lost my image, it got way too dark, then ink it up, in one of your positioners or whatever, or I don't know, I mean, I could just go like this again over the top of it, but I can ink it up again, go right over the top of what I've already stamped and colored. Don't do it over the bleed-proof white, and just stamp it out in a darker tone, and then you'll have a darker impression of it in there, and then just start blending in some additional tones to blend in the darker impression, the secondary impression right over the top of it, okay? All right, so anyways, delicate versus kind of the more solid type of sky-based imagery stamping. Hope this video has come in handy for you. I always wanted to do it, and someone just bought the Aurora Borealis curtains. They sent in an order for it, and I thought, okay, I'm going to get around to this video. Finally, I've used this before, but I haven't targeted, the concept of the different values to stamp it out in, and kind of the retention of form after coloring type of instructional video until now. So, all right, thanks for watching, and thanks as always for tuning into the Stampscape channel. If you enjoy these types of videos, please hit the like button. It really helps out the video channel in terms of kind of promoting the channel to potentially other new people that might be interested in it.